critics say that collapsing bridges and tainted goods aren't the only signs of a government gone wrong. They point to global warming and the failure of the federal government to make a serious dent in greenhouse gases as another way in which our leaders have failed the country. Now, you might think that we have things to fix and that there's plenty of time to do it. But the serious effects of a warmer planet are still years and decades away, many believe. But environmentalists say that if you're looking for evidence that global warming is already causing problems, all you need to do really is look out your window. Here's our AFR correspondent, Jam Sardar, with more on the problems we face due to the rising tide.
All right, we'll see you in a minute.
Okay. It's easy to see why someone would want to float along the waters of the Chesapeake Bay. It's one of the more beautiful sights on the East Coast. The birds soaking in the sun, the waves gently washing ashore. But rising waters threaten to swallow up that shore, inch by sandy inch.
We're losing a lot of the islands in the bay, places like Smith Island, which is a haven of waterman culture, and Poplar Island, which you can almost see from here, have eroded over time or basically sunk over time.
Environmentalists say it's one way we're paying the price for global warming. Others pay from their pocketbook. People who live along the shore face the rising costs of flood insurance, if they can get insured at all. That's why the Chesapeake Bay Foundation says we've got to act fast, because the effects of global warming aren't 15 or 50 years away. They're happening right now.
Flooding, loss of property, increased storm events, all those are liable to happen in the bay.
Local landowners won't be the only ones who suffer. Anglers and animals who fish these waters will soon find their slippery friends in short supply. Rising temperatures mean bigger hotspots or dead zones where fish won't swim. That's why the Chesapeake Bay Foundation says we need to drive less, use energy-efficient light bulbs, and get farmers to use more environmentally friendly methods of growing and harvesting their crops.
With just a handful of practices that we know we need to implement from a much longer list, we estimated that those practices would remove about 4.8 million metric tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere each year. And just to put that in perspective, that would be the equivalent of the carbon dioxide emissions from residential electricity use in Delaware.
Maryland's Deputy Secretary of Agriculture knows why global warming is a hazard. He says Mother Nature's drought, not a hungry public, consumed this year's corn crop. That's why he says farmers already do all they can because they need a healthy environment to grow the food that feeds the nation and their families.
It's everybody's job to help the environment, not just farmers. Individual citizens, there are things that individuals can do, and people say, well, one little thing doesn't really help, but if everybody does one little thing, eventually it adds up to one big thing.
And environmentalists say we need to act now.
You can save the bay, save the planet. Almost everything you'll do that will help us reduce greenhouse gases will also reduce nitrogen pollution that ends up in the bay. So it's really a 2-for-1.
If we don't, we could be in for a very rocky future. I'm Jam Sardar for Fennell Reports.
See, Jam, this is a classic example of what you can see and what you believe. In most cases, people, the general population, when they see the Chesapeake Bay, they may think, oh, it's beautiful, it looks fantastic. What global warming? But the Chesapeake Bay Foundation is saying it's all around you, you just have to look deeper. Is that their point?
And happening right now, absolutely. And it's hard to see when your shoreline is receding, say, inch by inch. But over time, it presents a problem. Even now, as we said, people can't get insurance for if they live along the water because people know that this is coming, this is happening, and the insurers certainly don't want to have to pay for that kind of thing.
Are they going on the offensive now, the Bay Foundation, to try and better tell people that this is happening right here, happening right now?
They'll tell you they've been on the offensive for a long time, but that it's easier for them to try and get the kind of attention we need because so many more people are paying attention to this issue, that, like we saw because of the inconvenient truth. And when you hear that whole islands are being swallowed up, that's just the beginning of a lot of serious problems that there are to come, and that makes it, sad to say, easier to get the attention.
Let me play devil's advocate here for just a moment, because mentioning when you see glaciers melting, that's one thing. But droughts have been around for a long time. So now the Deputy Secretary of Agriculture, was he blaming the drought on the corn on global warming?
It's hard to
because that's
say.
going to be a hard sell for anyone to say, hey, look, we had a hot summer, and that's what happened to the corn.
It's hard to say whether any one particular event is related to global warming. But if you look back, if you see the temperature on our planet is rising, if droughts are happening more often than they used to, if we're getting flooded more often than we used to, taken as a whole, these things suggest that, yes, global warming is to blame. It's hard to, when you look at the tree instead of the forest, say, yes, this one summer was because of global warming. But when you take a look at the bigger picture, it's a lot easier to see that when it happens a lot more often, it's easy to put those puzzle pieces together and say, yep, there's really something to this.
Final question, and this is a softball question there, but
I
I got to ask you this, though. As you were walking along the Chesapeake Bay, just how pretty was it out there?
It was beautiful, absolutely. And you saw our photographer get some of the amazing wildlife that's out there. But remember, all of this is threatened. All of this is at risk. Even the Chesapeake Bay Foundation headquarters right there on that shore, who knows how much longer it is before those waves start lapping up against their building.
Okay, well, it's not the first time we've talked about this. Won't be the last.
Certainly.
All right, thanks, Jam. We appreciate that.